Ancient Irish mythology has its share of great male leaders, but there is an odd bit of gender balancing in the stories, especially with regard to Maeve, the Queen of Connacht. Maeve, who's buried in a large cairn visible today from miles around on top of the hill of Knocknarea. Maeve, when she got married, her husband Ailill became the king consort. And one night they were talking before retiring. Ailill mentioned that Maeve was indeed lucky to have met him, and she wondered where he was coming from with this. Well, he said, I brought a lot of wealth into this marriage. And Maeve felt that she was every bit as wealthy or had more wealth than perhaps Ailill, and she felt a bit offended by this, and she said, how do you make that out? Just imagine now if Albert had said the same thing to Victoria, where we'd be. Anyway, the argument wasn't settled, but the only way it could be settled the next morning was to ascertain what wealth each of them had. This was easier said than done at the time because, well, there was no IFAC farm accounts, there was no task books, and the rudiments of mathematics would have been pretty thin on the ground too. But the servants had no choice but to make some stab at counting the animals, the gold coins, the silver, the robes, the jewellery, the chariots, the stallions, the whole lot. And it came down to Finbenach Ailill's bull. It was a great white stud bull. Maeve had to admit she hadn't anything to compare with that. And there was only one other bull in Ireland at the time, the Táin Bó from Cooley in County Louth today. But how to get that bull from Dara MacFiachra in Ulster was the problem. Maeve thought about this and she felt she wouldn't get the bull outright from him. But if she made him an offer he couldn't refuse, he might lease her the bull for 12 months. And surely, with all the calves that would be produced, there would be one to match him in stature born from her own herd. So she intended to improve the genetics in this way. Her offer was a plot of land in Connacht, 50 heifers, and a lot of gold and silver along with that. Chariot, if you don't mind, thrown in for luck. The offer was too good to refuse. Dara was delighted, and a celebratory meal was ordered, attended by the nobles of Connacht and Ulster. The drink flowed perhaps a bit too freely at this banquet, and the Connachtmen, as is their wont, were found to be a bit boastful. They were heard to say that if the deal didn't go through, they would have taken the bull anyway. And the Ulstermen were not a bit pleased by this. The banquet was abruptly ended. The deal was off, and the Connachtmen went home without the bull. Maeve was equally offended by this turn of events, and this precipitated a war, a battle against the men of Ulster. The Ulstermen, the officer corps of the Ulstermen, when they went to defend their province, all wore cloaks, and when they attacked, it became known as a blanket defence. But unfortunately, the blanket defence could not be put into action because the warriors of Ulster came under a spell or a sickness that affected them all. Now one wonders what happened. Was their drink spiked? Or were they poisoned in some way? Whatever it was, they were incapable of fighting. And instead of the blanket defence, the Ulstermen had to employ a sweeper system. Cú Chulainn, a 17-year-old lad, it fell to him to defend the province. Well, the odds were stacked against him, but by a bit of guerrilla warfare at first, taking off the Connacht men one by one with a slingshot, and then fighting them in hand-to-hand combat at fords, he got the better of them. And Maeve was getting quite worried at this stage because she was losing quite a number of fearsome warriors to this young fellow. So there were many epic tales about this ongoing battle or battles, and Cú Chulainn came up against some of his own relations in battle and made deals with them, and the last one he fought was with his own stepbrother and best friend, Ferdia, who was slain, and Cú Chulainn retired with depression and being wounded to rest. And the warriors had got over their pangs at this stage, and they rose up to expel the Connacht men. They did, however, manage to get hold of the brown bull, Táin Bó Cúailnge, the brown bull, and he was brought across the border to Connacht. And what do you think happened? But the brown bull met Alil's white bull, and they went to battle. As fierce as any battle between the Ulstermen and the Connacht men. And it was the brown bull of Ulster that won the day and carried Finnbennach on his horns back to Ulster, scattering his entrails as he went along. But it didn't last long after him. He died of exhaustion in modern day Louth himself. So neither province had a bull. Both of them sensibly signed a peace treaty and didn't go to war for another 7 years. And how the genetics were improved after that of the respective herds is anyone's guess.